Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking into the companion guide for Clean, Unextinguished Hope's Legacy.
Right. It's really Sandra Radford's personal reflections on her daughter Hope's life and her battle with addiction.
Yeah, and it's meant to offer insights, maybe some comfort about addiction, grief, and, well, hope. It's a very personal account.
It is. And we should remember, memories are subjective. Some names are changed for privacy, which is understandable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So our goal here isn't just to, summarize the book. We want to pull out the key insights, Hope's own wisdom, really.
Exactly. To help understand addiction, grief, compassion, maybe find some hope, whether you've lost someone, struggled yourself, or just want to understand.
It feels like it's for anyone feeling a bit lost, really.
Mm-hmm. And hope.
Yeah.
She's central to this. Died at 22 from an overdose, but her mom wants her legacy to live on.
Hope herself said something really powerful, didn't she? About helping others.
She did. I want to help others see that they are not alone, that there is a way out of the darkness.
Wow. And she also talked about needing to, what was it? Break the cycle of the false security blanket that is my life.
That phrase, false security blanket, it really hits home, doesn't it?
It does. Makes you think. What does finding your way out of the darkness mean? How does connection or isolation play into that for any of us?
Good questions to keep in mind. The guide itself feels like Sandra, the author, reaching out, offering the support she wishes she'd had.
A mother's hand, yeah. And the hope that Hope's story might, help someone else, maybe save a life.
Definitely. So let's try and get to know Hope a bit better, beyond just the addiction.
Yes. The guide makes it really clear that addiction wasn't her whole story. Far from it. He talks about her resilience, her capacity for love.
You get this picture of her personality. Her laugh was apparently infectious, and she was really curious about everything, determined, too.
Yeah, not just struggling. She had this vibrancy. Her mom called her everything.
And passions, too. Loved the outdoors, fishing from age 3. She was a great softball player.
Right. And a helper. Enjoyed fixing cars, carpentry. Getting joy from giving.
Which makes the contrast with her internal struggles even sharper,
Exactly. That outward brightness and the hidden pain. It shows how addiction can mask so much.
Mm-hmm. And her own longing for peace comes through. Dreaming of a cabin by a lake. Wanting to be, in her words, enough for my life.
Enough for my life. That's profound. That feeling of inadequacy that maybe drives people towards substances.
It really highlights that core message. Addiction doesn't define the person.
And the guide has advice based on that.
Yeah.
Right. Like for families, see the person behind the addiction.
Yeah. And for others, listen for the human story. Remember, everyone needs someone to see them clearly.
The guide includes these prompts for reflection too, doesn't it? Asking the reader. Well, us, the listener.
Yes, like who brought light into your life like Hope did? What made them unforgettable?
How do you keep their spirit alive? Or specifically, what made your loved one more than their addiction?
They're powerful questions. They invite you to connect it to your own experience.
And it suggests practical things too, like making a tribute or defining their legacy, establishing a ritual.
Or even starting your own hope list, your own hopes, your aspirations. It's about channeling that energy.
Okay, so digging a bit deeper. The guide talks about her early life, some difficult stuff there.
Yeah, her parents divorced when she was young, joint custody stuff, feeling less than when her half-sister arrived. Things that can definitely impact a kid's sense of security.
And then, the Robert incident. That sounds really serious.
It was. An assault when she was 13. She kept silent for a long time and then, devastatingly. Her father didn't believe her, accused her of lying.
Oh, that's just heartbreaking. That must have completely broken their relationship.
The guide says it did. Permanently. That loss of trust from a parent in such a moment, it's huge.
And it shows how trauma can cascade, right? That lack of validation.
Exactly. Then later, a bipolar disorder diagnosis. And more difficulty with her father, he apparently refused to give her medication when she stayed with him.
Which would obviously make her emotional state worse during those visits. It highlights that connection between mental health and addiction vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Untreated mental health issues can really drive self-medication.
There were other things too. Smaller rejections, maybe, like not making the softball team, being told you couldn't see a boyfriend, things that might seem small but add up, especially with the existing trauma.
Yeah, potentially reinforcing those feelings of not being good enough or being controlled.
Then there was a move in 2009 with Richard and his sons, Seth.
Right. Hope connected well with Seth, but Richard, the stepfather figure, was described as alcoholic and cruel. Hope often had to defend her mother, a really turbulent environment.
And wasn't there an incident at school around then? Something violent?
Yes, she was badly beaten defending a friend, and that led to her first prescription for opioids at the hospital.
Wow. So the first exposure came through a legitimate channel after a trauma.
That's sobering. It really is. The guide stresses seeing all this through the lens of trauma, resilience, but also systemic failure. She faced so much without consistent, proper support.
But there were moments of hope, like when her mom picked her up from prison in June 2016. That sounded like a huge relief.
Immense relief, yeah. And Hope said something incredibly powerful on the car ride home.
What was that?
She told her mom, "Absolutely nothing you have ever done made me start using drugs."
Oh, wow. What a thing to say, taking that burden off her mother.
Yeah, and she also said she wanted to work things out with her father herself, showing real strength, wanting reconciliation.
But that hope was fragile, wasn't it? There was bad news soon after.
Yes, the hepatitis C diagnosis, a really stark reminder of the physical damage addiction causes.
Still, her spirit seemed to fight on. That tattoo idea. The serenity prayer.
Upside down over her track marks. A personal reminder right there to flip her perspective if tempted. Really powerful symbolism.
And she made a promise to her grandmother, too.
"I promise I'm never going away again." It felt for a moment like things might actually be okay, like the world was righting itself.
Those glimmers of hope,
Mm.
they're so important. It makes you think, doesn't it? Have you had moments like that where it felt like everything would finally be okay?
Or what words have healed you? Is this someone you wish you could just drive home one more time?
Yeah. And what promises have you made? To yourself or to someone you've lost? Heavy thoughts.
Very. Which brings us back to challenging that stereotype of the addict.
Right. The guide explicitly asks what image comes to mind, then contrasts it with hope.
Mm-hmm.
Hyper-intelligent, interesting, breathtaking, full of potential.
Someone who lit up a room. It drives home that addiction doesn't care about potential or personality. It can affect anyone.
And the stories from family and friends really flesh that out, don't they?
They really do. Her cousin Deedles remembering their childhood, feeling like sisters, how loved Hope was.
And Cousin Bo, different personalities but shared adventures, the late trips, getting stuck in the mud.
Yeah, the pranks under the dock. That wildly alive magic of childhood. A real sibling bond.
Then John Cordell, a family friend, remembering her as a kid learning to pitch, acknowledging she made mistakes, but always loved.
And Tyler, pup. His words are incredibly raw.
His love for her sounds so deep, calling her his magnet, his reason for breathing.
Yeah, their bond was unbreakable, he says. His grief is palpable. And how he felt understood by Hope's mother.
His commitment to sobriety now, as a way to honor her, and the shared tattoo, that blood-committed love, it's intense.
Very. And then Kristen, her friend, talking about sleepovers, Hope's bravery on the trampoline, just normal sisterly friendship stuff.
It all paints such a full picture. And the guide even includes notes from her time in treatment.
Right, showing she was actively engaged, completed classes, worked on rational thinking, attended 12-step meetings.
Made progress on goals, learned coping skills, addressed relapse prevention, her bipolar symptoms, the trauma.
Yeah, demonstrated increased self-esteem, trust, took responsibility, understood addiction as an illness.
So it's undeniable. She was working hard, and she was deeply, deeply loved. That completely shatters the stigma of isolation.
Absolutely. Which connects back to that concept she identified herself. The false security blanket.
Explain that a bit more. It's like addiction feels like comfort, but it's a trap.
Exactly. An illusion of safety that ends up ensnaring you. The guide links this personal insight to the medical view, the brain chemistry changes.
Neural pathways getting rewired, reward system going haywire, tolerance, dependence, the biological side.
Right. But Hope's phrase reminds us it's not just biology. It's about why someone seeks that comfort in the first place, the underlying need.
The guide talks about craving, too, like a monster gnawing at my insides, overriding everything else.
And Hope apparently reflected on how tricky tolerance is, especially after being clean for a while, making relapse even more dangerous.
And withdrawal. The guide doesn't shy away from describing the physical and emotional agony, that desperate need for relief.
No, it's very honest, and it shows how addiction just completely warps priorities. Everything becomes about the substance.
But Hope was also moving towards wanting self-sufficiency, wasn't she? That idea of being enough for my life.
Yes. Breaking free from dependency, not just on drugs, but maybe unhealthy relationships too. Seeking peace. That cabin by the lake again, a symbol of healing, solitude.
It really prompts some self-reflection, doesn't it, about authenticity in our relationships. Are we clinging to any false security blankets?
Mhm. Are there relationships we need to reassess? How do we find our own peaceful place, our own self-sufficiency?
The guide suggests steps like identifying those blankets, reassessing connections, planning for peace, practicing being self-reliant.
Which leads into the stark reality of the physical damage. The guide calls addiction a cycle. Pleasure, dopamine, use, tolerance, dependence, addiction, withdrawal, craving, relapse.
Relentless and unforgiving.
Totally. And the list of physical consequences is extensive. Cardiovascular, pulmonary, gastrointestinal, immune, endocrine, musculoskeletal, nervous system. It hits everything.
The most shocking part was learning Hope had atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease at 22.
Heartbreaking. And the author's regret about missed signs, the link to her father's heart condition. It shows addiction was breaking her body in ways they didn't even realize.
Beyond the physical, there's the emotional and cognitive impact, too.
Right. Mood disorders, emotional instability, just diminish well-being overall.
And cognitive function,
Yeah.
impairment, memory, attention, decision-making, all affected.
Personality changes too. Shifts in behavior, priorities, how they interact socially, sometimes even antisocial traits developing. Strained relationships. The erosion of self, really.
Plus disrupted sleep, increased risk-taking. It destabilizes everything.
Yeah, leading to social withdrawal, isolation, problems at work or school, financial strain, legal issues. The ripple effect is huge.
The author's reflection on how it impacted her relationship with Hope, that feels very raw and honest.
It does, and again, the reminder. Seeing addiction as a brain disorder helps reduce that stigma and fosters compassion.
So we should think, how did addiction impact our loved ones' mind, body, relationships? Where did the system fail them? Did we misjudge it as just a choice?
What emotional voids might have played a role, really digging deep?
Okay, let's talk about recognizing the signs. The guide says the changes in Hope weren't sudden, right? They were subtle at first.
Exactly, like emotional changes, her vibrancy dimming, laughing less, mood swings, anxiety, depression, even emotional numbness sometimes. Easy to miss or explain away.
And sleep patterns changing, being erratic, staying up all night, restless sleep.
Finding her asleep fully dressed on top of the bed, little things that seem off.
And the social and functional signs. Pulling away from family, old friendships unraveling, family tension, especially with her father.
Yeah, dreams of education fading, grades dropping, attendance issues, trouble concentrating, eventually leaving school, financial stress, legal problems.
The author shares a parent's perspective. Trust your gut. Don't dismiss changes. Look for patterns. Document them.
And remember, these are symptoms, not just bad behavior. That candy bar theft incident mentioned as a significant early red flag.
So the takeaways for parents or loved ones are trust instincts, pay attention, document, see the symptoms for what they are.
Makes you reflect, doesn't it? What early signs did you notice? Did you dismiss any? What stands out now?
Which leads right into, okay, you suspect something. What are the first steps?
Yeah.
It's hard. Denial is natural.
Very natural. Hope's words again. Mama, I needed you to see me, not the version of me you wanted to believe in.
It's hard. So suspecting isn't about judging. It's about seeing them with love, seeing the reality.
Exactly. The guide covers recognizing signs, approaching compassionately, practical steps like getting resources, creating a supportive space, and crucially, self-care for the family.
Understanding is the most powerful tool, it says. The author regrets waiting.
Yeah. So the immediate actions listed are quite direct. Document, contact a specialist, secure medications, get Narcan, find support groups, make an emergency contact list, research treatment options, protect finances.
And those first steps involve starting a detailed log. Behaviors, dates, symptoms, missing items, new friends, concerning incidents.
And there are specific do's and don'ts for having that first difficult conversation.
Like choosing the right moment, preparing your approach.
Building a support network, professional and personal. Prioritizing your own self-care as a caregiver.
Being ready for resistance, denial, anger, manipulation.
And having an action plan for different outcomes. The final note is powerful. Trust your instincts.
It makes you think about your own fears when you first suspected something. How did you react? What conversations were you afraid to have?
Then there's the complexity of love within addiction explored through Hope and Tyler's relationship.
Right. Described as a mix of love, loyalty, but also heartbreak. How relationships can help or hinder recovery.
Hope said Tyler saw the best in her even when she couldn't. That supportive side.
But the guide acknowledges the dual nature support, yes, but shared struggles could sometimes hold them back.
Tyler's view of Hope is so intense, his magnet, his reason for breathing, deep love.
And the guide shows the reality behind it. Genuine care, moments of light, Tyler physically protecting her sometimes, like monitoring her breathing.
Emotional support, shared dreams of getting clean, navigating danger together. It was complex.
It poses a tough question. How do you love someone through addiction without losing yourself?
What lessons did they teach you? How did loving them change your understanding of compassion?
The guide suggests honoring those lessons, defining love with boundaries, and channeling that love forward.
So after you recognize addiction, the guide talks about the next steps. It's not linear, right? It takes persistence.
Yeah. Involves approaching the person, seeking professional help, building support, navigating challenges. Recovery is a process, not an event.
And just acknowledging the need for change is often that crucial first step.
Makes you think about your first steps. Did you feel supported? What advice would you give someone just starting that journey?
The actionable steps are about creating a plan, building a support web, learning the language of addiction and recovery.
Then the guide revisits systemic failures and stigma. These weren't abstract for hope, were they? They were daily realities.
No, failed drug tests misunderstood, help being inaccessible, systems actually pulling her back sometimes.
And the core message: addiction is not a moral failing, it's a complex disorder.
A stark example, probation forbidding Hope and Tyler from seeing each other, deepening her despair.
And her question, Mom, where's the incentive to do better when everybody will view me as an addict? That really captures the weight of stigma.
It really does. It forces us to ask, how has stigma affected people we know? What assumptions have we made? How can we support honesty?
The guide talks about this cycle of being caught between recovery attempts and punishment, feeling trapped.
Yeah, the author describes having hope committed, and the intake process itself highlighted failures focusing on behavior, not causes, not believing in her potential.
It prompts questions like, when did your loved one seem ready for change? What blocked them? Did punishment sabotage progress? Did fear of punishment kill honesty?
Which leads into some really dark territory. The depth of Hope's despair, especially after Tyler left.
The loneliness, the stigma. It sounds suffocating.
And then the night in September 2015 when she intentionally overdosed.
The guide details that night. The frantic drive, finding her with a PICC line, the revival attempts.
And her plea to stop when she woke up, just wanting the pain to end. Her quote about the silence being deafening. The lack of sound pounds like a heartbeat. Chilling.
And someone confessed it was intentional. She just wanted the pain to stop.
Yes. And the most damning part. Despite nearly dying, she was released from the hospital. No observation, no treatment arranged. A massive system failure.
There was also a prior arrest mentioned. That broke her spirit.
Being coerced into being a confidential informant. Just another way the system seemed to work against her healing.
It leaves you wondering, how do you cope when you feel helpless watching someone suffer? What questions ever get answered after a crisis like that? How do we build better safety nets?
And then the guide recounts the night Hope died, July 18th, 2016.
Start with an ordinary moment, then that feeling of dread.
Finding her unresponsive. The bruises, the coldness, frantic CPR, fragmented, horrific memories for her mother.
And the person who was with her,
Mm-hmm.
their actions sound suspicious.
Removing clothing, staging the scene, silently watching the mother's reaction. A profound betrayal of trust.
It highlights Hope's own insight.
Mm-hmm.
Just having someone there doesn't mean safety. Real protection comes from someone who values your life over their fear.
Yeah. And the reflection on the unspoken rule of 47 hours, missed signs. And the brutal reality of how quickly relapse after sobriety can be fatal.
Living in the aftermath. The guide emphasizes grief isn't a destination, it's a journey.
And offers steps. Maintain support. Focus on personal healing. Rebuild relationships. Educate others. Advocate for change.
Develop new skills. Plan for the future. Practice forgiveness. Find meaning. Stay vigilant but hopeful. Consider family therapy. Pursue personal goals. A lot to work on.
Hope found peace in nature. The guy asks, what brings you peace? How can you create more calm? Suggest spending time in nature, setting goals, therapy, rebuilding connections.
There are exercises too. Building your life plan, breaking the cycle.
Yes, practical tools, and prompts about the hardest part of the aftermath, what helps healing, what long-term support looks like.
Which leads into understanding co-occurring disorders better. Dual diagnosis.
Hope's question, Mama, why doesn't my brain work like everyone else's? Shows she knew something was different, but maybe lacked understanding or support for it.
The guide lists common co-occurring conditions and stresses, integrated treatment, addressing mental health and addiction together.
It outlines approaches and how to find dual diagnosis treatment. Encourages reflecting on a loved one's experience, barriers they faced, and the benefits of integrated care.
And it covers the whole spectrum of treatment options, right?
Mhm.
Detox, MA, rehab, harm reduction, therapies, peer support.
Family support, legal help, overdose prevention, alternative therapies. It's a wide range and provides questions to ask when evaluating programs.
Encourages thinking about what's been tried, frustration with one-size-fits-all, and the ideal of personalized treatment.
It revisits the systemic failures again, the criminalization instead of help, asking how we survive hard moments, heal patterns, what self-care truly means.
Offering steps for coping mechanisms, boundaries, healing rituals.
And then Hope's legacy. The guide is clear. Her death resulted from avoidable failures.
But emphasizes the profound love in her life. A life with such love can't be truly terrible.
Her mother feels Hope still teaches, guides, loves, believes Hope would want us to know love doesn't end, beauty exists with pain, the parent-child bond is timeless.
It asks us, how has loss changed us? How do we carry their legacy? What message would they want shared?
The author's reflection on not knowing enough, that love alone isn't always enough without action and change. It's powerful.
But the final message is one of hope. Even in darkness, there's a spark.
And a direct address to anyone listening who's on this road. You are not alone.
For those who've lost someone, find support. GRNSP, Compassionate Friends. Learn about harm reduction and addiction science. Never stop loving them.
For those struggling, you're not your mistakes. You deserve healing and support. Reach out. Your story isn't over.
And for allies, speak up against stigma, support reform organizations, learn and share knowledge.
The guide has a huge list of resources: crisis lines, family support, mental health, trauma support, books, websites, podcasts. Explore them.
The purpose of the guide and this deep dive is really to offer hope, understanding, a way forward.
Honoring Hope's unextinguished legacy, her fierce love, resilience, unbreakable spirit. Join the movement for change. The companion guide is there for deeper healing.
Remember, you are